Don't push me because I'm close to. All right. We are live. Yes, yes, y'all. I hope everybody's having a good week. Welcome. Happy Tuesday. Hope your week is going smoothly. We've got a lot of talk about in the world of boxing. It's a slow week in terms of the fight that's taking place, or the major fight that's taking place this weekend. The biggest fight this weekend is between Christian Mbili and Sergey Derevianchenko. It's got a pretty good undercard. You've got Arslan Makhmudov in his second fight since losing to Ajit Kabayel. He's going to be fighting Guido Vianello, who just fought a good fight against Efe Ajagba. And a few fights ago lost to Jonathan Rice. And he's, had a couple fights between Johnny Rice and Efe Ajagba. He actually fought Ajagba a lot closer than I thought he would. It was a split decision that really could have gone either way. And so Vianello is going to be returning to the ring against Makhmudov. And again, this is Makhmudov's second fight since that pretty devastating loss to Ajit Kabayel, where he just got outboxed and blasted to the body, got dropped like 3 times on that Riyadh undercard. Also on that Christian Mbili versus Sergey Derevianchenko undercard is Abdullah Mason, who I see as being one of the most talented prospects in all of boxing. You've got certain prospects where you see that they do a lot of things well. They might be very fundamentally sound, but they lack that jump off the page athleticism, or just that wow factor where you could tell that, okay, there's something about this person that's just naturally better than other people. Like somebody could practice working on their punching power or hand speed. They'll never be as quick as Abdullah Mason, right? I look at him as being that good. I remember seeing a young Zab Judah when he was looking that good. I remember when Shane Mosley's skills were jumping off the page. I think Abdullah Mason might be one of the most, I would say, must-watch fighters if things go well as he starts working up in opponent competition. Usually there's often a difficult fight somewhere along the way. We've had a couple of less than spectacular fights for Abdullah Mason, but not many. He's won almost all of his fights via knockout, but he will get at some point. This fight coming up, I don't expect to be that, but I think it's another showcase. It's an 8-rounder for Abdullah Mason on this Christian Mbili versus Sergey Derevianchenko undercard. We're going to talk a bit about the main event. I'm probably going to record a preview after this live chat. So if it doesn't drop tomorrow, hopefully it drops Thursday morning, Mbili versus Derevianchenko, but we'll dig into that fight a bit as well. I'm obviously going to spend a good amount of time discussing the controversial disputed win for Vergil Ortiz Jr. as he beat Sergey Bohachuk. I've watched this fight twice now, and I had a different result the first time I saw it versus the second time I saw it. So I'm going to give some of the context when I first saw it, and then I rewatched it and I scored it very carefully round by round, and I took notes on the rewatch. So we're going to talk about Bohachuk versus Vergil Ortiz, the controversial win for Ortiz. I look at it as being possibly, depending on how the fight is viewed and remembered, it felt like a classic just in terms of the back and forth nature. It was relatively high stakes, and it was just a super entertaining fight that, depending on how you perceived what you were watching, you could have had any multiple ideas of what was taking place in that ring, and you could have walked away with a few different results. Claymore Rain is in the house. Thank you for coming through. We're also going to talk Angelo Leo's stunning knockout win over Luis Alberto Lopez. Venado Lopez is no longer the IBF featherweight champion. This was his 4th title defense, and this was a great fight before the knockout, and it ended in very dramatic fashion with Angelo Leo KOing Luis Alberto Lopez with a left hook. Lopez was getting away, throughout several fights with I wouldn't say cutting corners, but because of his style of offense, he's got a lot of gaps in his defense, but he's so talented and he makes his style work for him. You know, Emmanuel Navarrete, same thing. A lot of flaws in their defense, but they make their offenses work for them in a way where it kind of masks and covers up some of those defensive flaws. Well, Luis Alberto Lopez was able to get away with it until he wasn't. And it just says something about the devastating and brutal nature of the sport that, you know, just a year and some change ago, we saw Luis Alberto Lopez absolutely flatten Michael Conlan in his first title defense. And now we see Luis Alberto Lopez flat on his back against Angelo Leo. That's just the way the sport works. Let's see. Yeah, Claymore Rain, you said that you rewatched the fight as well. Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that. Left hook from left field. Yeah, that Angelo Leo. And the thing is, he was boxing super well against Venado Lopez. You know, I had it, you know, going into the 9th round, I had it 4 rounds to 4. This could have been like 5-4 either way going into the 10th round. And then it ended in dramatic knockout in the 10th round. But this was it wasn't like Venado Lopez was being dominated and then knocked out. It's not that Venado Lopez was winning the fight and then got knocked out, or winning the fight observably and obviously and then getting knocked out. This was a sensational, very, very good fight where both fighters were doing certain things that they wanted well until the knockout. But I get the feeling that Angelo Leo was slightly having his way more than the champ was. I just feel like when he got on the move and started sticking that jab out there and started boxing, that Venado Lopez was getting kind of stuck in the mud and was almost desperately lunging in with some of those power shots. And he was landing a lot of those power punches. And in certain moments, I thought that the champ was going to start pulling away. Well, just when I started thinking that Lopez was going to start pulling away on the scorecards, Angelo Leo comes right back and starts boxing well and starts putting, you know, Venado Lopez on his skates and backing him up again. So yeah, very good fight with a very dramatic ending. Marco Cardona is in the house. Thank you for coming through. We're also going to talk about the biggest elephant in the room when it comes to boxing and the business of boxing. That is Turki Al-Sheikh. And I know Teofimo Lopez calls himself the takeover, but I feel like right now we are witnessing a Turki takeover of the sport. It's really one of those golden rules types of scenarios where whoever has the gold makes the rules. And it seems like Turki is starting to throw his weight around a little bit more demonstratively than he was when he was just, hey, Turki, hey, he's hitting the scene, putting on these nice Riyadh season cards, right? Now he's starting to state what he wants. And it's almost like boxing, instead of, you know, being a landscape where it's promoter driven. You've got a collection of fighters who are fighting with this promoter, this promoter, this promoter. It looks like we are slowly shifting from that. If this new emergence holds, it looks like we might be shifting from that to you're either with Turki Al-Sheikh and you're in that sphere, or you're not and you're on the outs. Right now, it looks like Canelo currently is on the outs and is doing his own thing, which isn't a huge surprise because Turki seems like he's trying to put together the most competitive fights, either the fights that the fans want or the fights that he really wants. And Canelo, because he's been in the driver's seat for much of his career, I could see him being on the outs, but it's a little bit more interesting when I hear that Tszyu is on the outs. I'm thinking, what's up with that? Like Tszyu, as far as I've seen him conduct his career, has been somebody who wants to fight the other best fighters. I mean, he got in there with Sebastian Fundora on late notice. He fought, you know, Brian Mendoza. He fought Tony Harrison. He's been fighting good fighters, right? It's a little bit concerning to me. I'm just wondering what happened there when Turki was talking with the representatives, because Tszyu has a team, and Tszyu said he likes what Turki's doing, but he says he's got a team that handles his business. I wonder what happened in those negotiations, if there were in fact negotiations, or if they were just kind of, you know, opening conversations to kind of get things in motion. Turki Al-Sheikh said that he wanted, you know, the winner of Well, he said he wanted a couple of things. He wanted Terrence Crawford against Vergil Ortiz. He wanted Tszyu, obviously, versus Vergil Ortiz. That was supposed to take place on that Terrence Crawford versus Madrimov undercard. But I'm just wondering where things fell apart to where now it looks like Tszyu is currently on the outs. Because if you're on the outs with Turki Al-Sheikh, what are you going to do? Are you going to work with PBC? I know that they said that they're going to start getting on their front foot in scheduling some fights, non-pay-per-view fights, hopefully. They said that they're going to start rolling out some non-pay-per-view fights on Amazon Prime, but it's almost like a fighter can either work with the promoter in Riyadh season or outside of Riyadh season. And it seems like what's taking precedent on the boxing landscape, again, unless you're Canelo or maybe Tank Davis, because I remember him being a little bit disrespectful when he was stating his demands. If Turkey was going to get the Tank Davis fight that he wanted, right? Talking about, bring Ferraris and you deliver them to my driveway type of talk. Well, unless you're a superstar in boxing, it seems like if you get the call from Turki Al-Sheikh, you might want to answer that call, right? Unless it's a fight that's disadvantageous and you know that it's disadvantageous, like whoever was managing Jared Big Baby Anderson might not have wanted to take that Martin Bakole fight. Or if you're handling Vergil Ortiz's career, maybe you don't do that rematch against Sergey Bohachuk. Not to say that Vergil can't win the fight, but that fight really could have gone either way. And I'm going to talk about the rewatch and how I scored the fight upon my second watch. I'll let you know what I thought the first time and then what I came away with the second time. Let me get to some of what you're saying. Yeah, Claymore Rain, Turkey's not being so humble anymore. He's kind of coming in and he's calling his shots, and I can't really knock him for doing it. It's like, how can you have promoters, sanctioning bodies, fighters eating out of your hand and not let it kind of get to your head a little bit to where you don't feel shy about throwing your weight around? But it's going to be interesting to see how boxing kind of aligns itself around Riyadh season and the will of Turki Al-Sheikh and the fights that he wants. Because I'll tell you what, it was looking like Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda isn't going to happen. And it still might not. But it sounds like Turki Al-Sheikh wants that fight to happen. Well, guess what? I think unless De La Hoya says no to Turki Al-Sheikh, and now they're talking, Turki and De La Hoya, unless De La Hoya puts his foot down and says, no, I don't want my fighter fighting Shakur Stevenson right now. I'm going to move him this way, maybe get a belt through some other means. Unless he goes that route, it sounds like what Turki wants, Turkey's more than likely going to get. And Shakur Stevenson's a free agent right now. And if he is really down, like he says he is, to fight just about anybody, because he really wants his status to grow. He wants, I know he's been giving mixed signals as he started to get a lot more hate and he's kind of embracing the role of the heel, of the villain a little bit. But Shakur Stevenson, through most of his career, was sounding like he wanted the fights with the other biggest fighters. Well, it sounds like if Turki Al-Sheikh is interested in Shakur like he appears to be, then maybe Shakur can fight with Turki Al-Sheikh without even having to work with another promoter right now. So we'll see how that unfolds. But right now, I'm starting to see again, a shift to where it's either Riyadh season or it's not Riyadh season. And again, I think that fighters can also do both, where, okay, the Turki Al-Sheikh will call you about a certain fight. Maybe you take that fight and then you go back to your regular promoter and fight on a ESPN card or a regular DAZN card or something like that. Maybe fighters will have the leverage, and they do pretty much have the leverage to do both, but it really comes down to what fights Turki Al-Sheikh wants to make, because what he's doing is he's contacting the parties. He's making an offer that he thinks is reasonable and fair, and it's up to them whether they take it or leave it. And it sounds like he's paying them more than the regular boxing business model is able to afford to pay them right now. So what does this mean for like the business of boxing? The fact that Turki Al-Sheikh is able to say, this is the fight I want. Let's just hypothetically say it's Shakur Stevenson, William Zepeda. Whereas maybe before, Bob Arum and Oscar wouldn't have come together to do the business. Turki Al-Sheikh says, well, I'll pay Shakur this, and I'll pay William Zepeda this. Let's make it happen. And if it's enough to satisfy Shakur and Zepeda, guess what? You've got to fight. Well, on the business profit versus loss side of that, it seems to me, I'm not their accountant, I haven't looked at the books, but it seems to me like in a vacuum, like as a standalone event, a lot of these events seem to be hemorrhaging money. Like these don't appear to be profitable events. Like I don't think that for AJ Ngannou or for Tyson Fury and Ngannou, you're paying these guys what you're paying them. You're flying these celebrities out. You are paying all of the fighters on the undercard to participate. I don't think that there's enough money at that gate and enough pay-per-view buyers to where you're turning a profit. It just doesn't seem to be the case. So maybe Saudi Arabia and Turki Al-Sheikh and his financial backers, they've got the money where they don't need the profit event over event. Because again, I feel like this is like a marketing tool to kind of big up and promote Riyadh, Saudi Arabia as a global tourist attraction. I look at this as being maybe a tax write-off. This is kind of like one of the things that's going to facilitate that reputation and that growth. So again, event over event, I don't think he needs the profit. But what about all the other players in the game? What does that mean for regular Matchroom, regular Top Rank, PBC, regular Golden Boy, what is regular Queensberry? What happens? Do these fighters, I'm sure the fighters, once they taste the bigger money, are a little bit more reluctant to go back to what they were making. You get accustomed to making more. I don't think you're going to go back and fight for a small fraction of that, especially in a fight that carries any risk. So if a fighter does come back and agrees to make less in their next couple fights, I think they would kind of be gimme fights rather than fights that are just as difficult as what Turki wants when he's paying them all of this money. You know what I mean? Like if Raymond Ford fights or if Nick Ball fights a non-Turki card, I don't think it's going to be against the biggest and the baddest, featherweight. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be against the elite fighters if they're going to be making a lot less than what Al-Sheikh was willing to pay him. Let me get to some of what you're saying. So Claymore Reigns said that the promoters are hating. Well, it seems like the promoters are somewhat willing to play ball with him, right? It sounds like they are like Golden Boy. At first, he sounded like he was going to do things his way, but then we see that he's meeting with Al-Sheikh. Bob Arum, we already know, is down to do business with Turki. Eddie Hearn is obviously doing frequent business with Turki, as is Frank Warren. The one we haven't seen do business with Al-Sheikh, at least as far as I know, is PBC, which it is still yet to be determined what the next phase of their run is going to look like. We haven't seen a non-pay-per-view Amazon Prime card yet. So I don't know what the next era or phase of PBC is going to be. But right now, it looks like promoters will do things and run their own cards. Like, for instance, this weekend, it's a Top Rank card, Christian Mbili. Well, it looks like Christian Mbili, unless he goes to fight with Turki Al-Sheikh and against an opponent that Al-Sheikh wants him to fight, it looks like Mbili might be kind of on the outs in the way that Janibek Alimhanullah is, right? There's certain divisions where certain promoters have fighters where they can match elite fighter against elite fighter. In other scenarios, like Top Rank at 160 and 168, they just don't have a deep stable. So Janibek is just kind of on an island. He's not going to be fighting for this unification. Yeah, I know he's got 2 belts, and I know that 160 as a division kind of sucks right now. It's not that good. You got Hamza Shiraz, Carlos Adames. You don't have much else. But let's look at 168. Christian Mbili, unless he's going to work with PBC, and you've got PBC and Top Rank working together, well, Christian Mbili then, can't fight against David Benavidez, David Morrell, Demetrius Andrade, whoever else they have at 168, or even Canelo, unless Canelo fights on a Top Rank card, but I don't see that happening. So unless Turki steps in and says, I want to see Mbili against whoever Mbili is kind of on an island like Janibek Alimhanallah is. So, promoters, again, they thrive in certain divisions and they kind of suffer, and they are lacking in other divisions. I kind of feel bad when a fighter is with a promoter who doesn't have a deep stable in that division, because it's hard to make cross promotional fights when usually it's the promoter who doesn't have an appetite, because they have to split the pie, so to speak, with that other promoter. So they'd rather keep things kind of insular in-house. So yeah, Mbili, it looks like he's gonna, it looks like Bob Arum and Top Rank, and Todd DeBuff, Top Rank, whoever's making the fights right now, is going to have difficulty matchmaking for Mbili unless they A, co-promote, or B, get Turki Al-Sheikh involved. And then he's kind of running the show at that point. You might still have Top Rank on the flyer, but it's the Turki Al-Sheikh Riyadh season show. Let me get to some of what you're saying. QT is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Let's see. I'm gonna sip some of the. I've been sipping a lot of tea lately. Sorry to do that in the mic as well. He said, QT said, Canelo and Tank will probably never work with Turkey. Canelo exposed the business model, low budget fights with higher margins, offset everything by giving the fighter a larger cut of everything sold. Yeah. So unless Turkey just pays him some ridiculous amount, Canelo will do things Canelo's way. Really, the only thing that will change what Canelo's doing is if us, the boxing public, stop supporting Canelo events and stop buying them. Because if the boxing fans, even a significant portion or percentage of boxing fans were willing to boycott a Canelo event, and whether they just don't watch the fight or if they do, or if they watch it through some other means, if Canelo events started to suffer financially to where it wasn't worth it for promoters to pay him what he wants to fight at an Edgar Berlanga or Jaime Munguia or John Ryder, if that happened, then Canelo would have to, he would either retire or he would start giving us some of the fights that we want right now. Otherwise, he's just going to keep on conducting business in the way that he wants to. So yeah, he kind of exposed the model similarly to how, Floyd Mayweather did in the later stages of his career, even though he did, end up fighting Manny Pacquiao, and he fought those two with Maidana, where the first fight was tough, so he ran it back and fought him again. And there were some good fights in there. I mean, he fought Canelo Alvarez when Canelo was 22 and he was 36. But yeah, if the boxing market, meaning the promoters in this case, are willing to pay Canelo what he wants to fight B to B- level fighters, not to say Jaime Munguia is not B+ or whatever, but less than the elite. Like right now, it just seems like no other fight makes sense for Canelo but David Benavidez, right? For the last couple years, or Terrence Crawford, just because that's kind of like a wild. And I know that people probably feel different about Crawford versus Canelo now that Crawford fought Madrimov. You might have a different opinion of Canelo Crawford than you did before that fight. But the other fight that made sense was Canelo versus Crawford. But here's another kind of dilemma in this Turki Al-Sheikh takeover. If Crawford wants to fight Canelo, but Turki doesn't want to work with Canelo, well, then what? I don't think Crawford wants to fight Vergil Ortiz, but if Turki's willing to pay Crawford enough to make that make sense, maybe Crawford kind of goes away from what he wants to do because he's getting the bag, so to speak. Kind of like when he stepped away to get the BLK Prime money to fight David Avanesian, even though David Avanesian isn't as tough, supposedly, as Vergil Ortiz. Crawford might not want to fight Vergil Ortiz, but might still do it because Turki's paying him enough. I would imagine, Crawford would probably want to rather fight even Tim Tszyu or Sebastian Fundora, because he's got two of the belts. I'm sure Crawford probably wants to fight Fundora. But if you say Crawford wanted to fight Fundora, well, if Turki Al-Sheikh doesn't want to work with, or not Fundora, but if Crawford wanted to fight Tim Tszyu, but Turki doesn't want to work with Tim Tszyu or Canelo, well, again, then you've got that friction. So there's a lot that's going to have to kind of play out, and we're going to hear what fighters say in interviews in terms of what they want. But it's important that we read between the lines too, because they might say one thing, but they might be diplomatic about it and be willing to cooperate with the biggest pockets in the sport. So yeah, it's something to keep your eye on, but make no mistake, it appears that we are witnessing a Turkey takeover of the sport. You're either in that circle or you're out of that circle. So stay tuned. I want to get to some of what you're saying. Then I want to get to Bohachuk versus Ortiz. Let's see. You said PBC has Ruiz, Pitbull, Morel, and Rayo Valenzuela on their recent. Yeah, so they had fighters, but I haven't taken another look at the flyer. Are they? Was PBC Premier Boxing Champions? Was that on like the poster for Crawford versus Majimov? It might have been. So maybe they did get like some sort of a commission or a split of the action, something like that. But yeah, they did obviously feature some fighters on that card. Ventru, hey, what's going on? Thank you for coming through. Yeah, those were some good fights. We had 2 Fight of the Year contenders. Did I agree with Floyd winning against Maidana? The first fight, I thought it was a coin toss. I'll tell you what, as a Floyd fan, I was very worried going into those scorecards. I remember me and my brother, we were looking at each other like, I don't know. And I was like, because we had a bunch of, people over for like a fight party. We would do that for a lot of the fights for different fighters. And I was just kind of going around the room, like asking like my dad, like, did Floyd win that? Because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. And I was, again, being a Floyd fan, I was relieved to hear the scorecard. But Maidana might have won that fight. It was really a could go either way thing. Floyd obviously did a lot better in the rematch, and I thought that he won pretty clearly in that rematch. But and not to say that the rematch wasn't tough. It was a tough fight, but that first fight really could have gone either way. So with Bohachuk versus Vergil Ortiz, the classic, the controversy, when I first watched that fight, first of all, I was kind of sleepy, but I did watch the fight. I was out. My cousin Johnny, he's a hitting coach for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So I went to the Dodgers Pirates game out here at Dodger Stadium. And like after the game, we got to go out on the field, take big family pictures, shout out. But we ended up hanging out for a while. Then I came home, and then late at night, I watched the fight. So I was fighting to stay awake to watch the fight. But as I was watching the fight, I thought Vergil won. Even with those 2 knockdowns, I thought he won maybe even 8 to 9 rounds. Or I thought that he won the vast majority of the rounds. Even there were a lot of close rounds, but I thought Vergil did enough to win the fight. I rewatched the fight yesterday, and I would watch it like in 2 to 3 round chunks. And then I would score the rounds very carefully. Pablo B is in the house. Yeah, thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. I was scoring the fight very carefully the second time around. And here's what I came away with, because obviously there was a lot of backlash. I remember reading, I think it was Steve Kim, who sounded like he thought it was a robbery. I know Boxing Wave, a channel and a boxing voice that I really respect, he thought that it was a robbery. Richard Dwyer, one of my favorite boxing channels, Richard Dwyer thought that it was a robbery. Dan Rayfield, I know he came out and said, no, it's math. And he didn't think it was a robbery. I thought that Vergil Ortiz won the fight. First time I watched it. I rewatched the fight, and here were my takeaways. All right. Round 1, 10-8 for Bohachuk, right? He got the knockdown. That is what it is. 10-9 Ortiz, round 2. I had Ortiz winning 2 and 3. They were close and competitive fights, but I felt pretty comfortable scoring those for Vergil Ortiz. 4th round, I thought Bohachuk won the 4th round. And between the 4th and 5th is when the ref, or I'm sorry, the outside of the ring, they did the review and they let the referee, Harvey Dock, know that was a knockdown. So it went from perhaps a Vergil Ortiz round to a Bohachuk 10-8 round, right? So far I've got Bohachuk winning the first and the fourth, Vergil winning the second and third. And here's the thing about the fight. You know, I was surprised that Bohachuk won the jab battle, but it really was kind of simple as to why he won the jab battle. You've got one guy, Bohachuk, with his hands up and his guard up. You've got the other guy with his hands down. So Vergil was eating jabs. He was eating those jabs from Bohachuk, whereas Vergil, who looks like and sounds like and wants to give the appearance of throwing every punch with wicked intentions, everything hard. Vergil will load up, throw a right hand to the body, load up, throw a left hand to the body. He would load up, throw a hard jab. Like he would move around the ring. And by the way, I was surprised how nicely and smoothly Vergil was slipping jabs and punch and right hands in the first couple of rounds. He became less elusive after that. He started eating many more of those right hands from like rounds 4, 5 onward, eating a lot more punches and looking a bit more fatigued. But Vergil, even when he would throw the jab, he would throw it would look like a hard jab. And to the ears, Vergil's punches sounded louder than Bohachuk's. They sounded louder. So I'm going to get to why I think that if you were to have Vergil winning this fight, you've got to believe that Vergil is throwing the harder, more impactful punches, right? You've got to say, okay, yeah, you know, Bohachuk hit him with that right hand, but that wasn't as tough as Vergil coming forward and hitting him with that body shot. You would have to look at the comparative punching effectiveness in that way, I think, to have Vergil come out on top. And not to say that Vergil isn't hitting harder, but I'm saying that you've got to make that assumption if you're going to give Vergil some of these close rounds, even though he was up on CompuBox. Now, sometimes I think that they were giving Vergil credit for landing like a right hand that he throws hard. It makes a concussive sound, but Bohachuk's got his hands up, so it's like a partial land. I feel like I don't know how they were scoring the punches landed, but I get the impression that they were scoring some of those for Vergil because he won the punch stat battle. And his dominance to the body, it was like 100 to like 30 something. That was the difference in shots to the body, according to CompuBox, if I read that correctly. But I mean, one thing that Vergil was doing well was dedicating his work to the body. He never stopped going to the body, but he went to the body often. Well, one, because that's just what Vergil Ortiz does, but also because Bohachuk had his hands up. Whereas again, Vergil's down here and he's throwing his jab from down here, pop, pop. And so every time Bohachuk wants to step into a jab, Vergil's eating it. Whenever Bohachuk wants to commit to a right hand, Vergil's eating it. He just he didn't have his hands up. It kind of a lesson in fundamentals there. But I mean, I get why people, for offensive reasons, put your hands down, but understand you're going to be eating more shots. And I think that that's one of the reasons why Bohachuk started taking over the jab battle, which again, I firmly believe that he did. So 5th round, I gave it to Ortiz. I thought this was a close round, but I thought that Ortiz kind of clearly won it. He was putting his punches together, throwing a lot of hard shots to the body. Again, throwing some right hands over the top, landing some of those. And also, I thought that the commentary was pretty biased. I was listening to, who is it? Corey Erdman, because sometimes they'll have Todd Grisham as the main voice, the play-by-play voice on DAZN. Other times they have Corey Erdman. Sometimes they have Mannix and Mora. This time they have Gabe Rosado. Like, what are we, the public, supposed to think when we hear Gabe Rosado respond to a Vergil Ortiz punch with, oh, Bohachuk's hurt? It's like, well, damn, I guess he's hurt. If Gabe Rosado says he's hurt, I guess he must be hurt. I just feel like sometimes you get the commentary kind of steering the public with some of their opinions, right? I don't know if every O deserved an O, but when you're watching the fight and you're listening to the commentary, it is influential. So I had Ortiz winning the 5th round. I had Bohachuk winning the 6th and the 7th. close rounds. And in the 7th round, Vergil rallied. And that's what Vergil was doing for some of these rounds. He would start throwing a lot of punches, like in the last 15 to 20 seconds, combinations to the body. He would double up. He would throw a jab and then a right hand, then another right hand, another shot to the body. And again, his punches sound like they thump. And he's got that look on his face like he's trying to take the guy out. Whereas again, Bohachuk kind of has like a pretty nonchalant, sometimes he's smiling, right? So I think that body language can kind of steer the public as well. I think sometimes body language and how you conduct yourself without throwing punches, but how you conduct yourself in the ring can go a long way in what the audience is picking up. So I gave the 6th and the 7th to Bohachuk. So at this point, I've got 4 rounds to Bohachuk and 3 rounds for Ortiz. And then you've also got the Bohachuk knockdown. And then I've got the 8th round. That was another knockdown. And who thought of all of a sudden scoring knockdown rounds 9-8? It's as if Bohachuk was like on the ropes and the ropes were holding him up, and the ref probably should have stopped in and called it a knockdown, but he didn't. And it was one-way traffic where Ortiz is just beating the hell out of Bohachuk and Bohachuk's not doing anything return. No, it was still a competitive round outside of the knockdown. So all of a sudden you've got like the commentator saying that should be a 9-8 round. Why the hell is Gabe Rosado, who I respect as a fighter, and I do like a lot of Rosado's commentary, not for this fight so much. Why would you start bringing out a 9-8 round? Like, how often do we even consider giving the guy or robbing the guy who just knocked the guy down of a 10-8 round? Like, you've got to really take an ass whooping, like to turn it around to where you no longer won a 10-8, but now it's a 9-8. Even though you knocked the guy down. I didn't like how they kind of introduced that score. And I know that there are scenarios where some people think that it's in play or on the table. It should be treated in rare occasions where you give somebody a 9-8 round after they knock the guy down. So the fact that they just kind of nonchalantly said, oh yeah, that's a 9-8 for Vergil, I didn't like that. So round 8, I've got it for Bohachuk as a 10-8 round. Round 9, close round, I actually gave it to Bohachuk. By this point, Bohachuk is clearly winning the jab battle. Like Vergil still has his hands down and his head's kind of getting rocked back with some of those jabs. Some of those jabs are like double jabs where he gets hit, pauses for a beat, throws another jab and moves him with it, and then throws a right hand. And Bohachuk will sometimes be in the trenches, kind of mid-range to close range, throwing hooks to the body, throwing hooks up top. But all you hear is the commentator mentioning what Vergil just did with his hook or his shot to the body, with little mention to what Bohachuk did. But I actually had Bohachuk winning the 9th round. And keep in mind, I thought Vergil won the first time I watched this fight. Round 10, I gave it to Ortiz. Bohachuk did well though. It was a competitive round. Bohachuk, by this point, it's kind of back and forth. These are a lot of these rounds are tough to score. But Vergil worked a lot in the 10th round, and I thought he actually deserved that round. Round 11 and 12, I gave to Vergil Ortiz. In round 11, that was one of the great rounds of this year. That was an excellent round. I think that Bohachuk was actually hurt that round, but then Bohachuk landed some amazing punches as well. Great round. I scored it for Vergil. And then round 12, also great round. This is the one where they stopped it so they could fix Vergil's tape on his glove. It was an unfortunate pause of the action because things were picking up. By that point, they had both hurt each other in that 12th. Then you had like a long pause in the action, and then they resumed. But yeah, the 12th round was great. And again, in the 11th round, we got some more of those Gabe Rosado which I think is just totally misleading. And it's not indicative always of what's going on in the ring. It's just somebody's opinion based on who they think is hitting harder between the two. And again, Bohachuk was tagging Vergil Ortiz with jabs. Again, I gave that 11th round and the 12th to Ortiz, but Ortiz was still losing the jab battle. I gave him those rounds because he outworked Bohachuk and was still committing to the body a lot. So, you know, I enjoyed this fight even more the second time around. The first time it was great. Second time it was even better. This was a fantastic fight, and they both did things well. Was it a robbery? That's a little, I would say it's close to a robbery, but the reason I would say that it's not is because of the amount of swing rounds that we had in this fight, and the idea that if you thought that Vergil was throwing and landing the more effective punches, even though it was Vergil who hit the canvas twice, and not even necessarily because he was hurt. I think he was more hurt with one knockdown than the other. But if you're off balance and you get hit with a punch around the same time you fall, that's a knockdown. And Vergil, by this point, to me, has no credibility when he's talking about, no, I wasn't knocked down. Because I've now seen Vergil lie like 3 times about knockdowns. Like I saw him do it in the Mean Machine Kavaliauskas fight where he got hurt. He got dropped and he was noticeably hurt. Then he throws like a wild punch and falls down. Well, and I was saying this in the recap, or I might have even said this in the preview and the recap, but if you get hurt and then you want to get out of jail free card, throw a wild punch and hit the canvas, because the referee might just call that a slip because it was not a direct result of the punch. So you get punched, you get buzzed, you get wobbled. Throw a haymaker, hit the canvas. You're going to miss with the haymaker, hit the canvas. The ref's going to say no, as Vergil was pointing to the ground, like, no, that wasn't a knockdown. And the ref's not going to count. He's just going to check your gloves, give you a little bit of time to clear the cobwebs, then resume the fight. If you don't call these knockdowns, I think you're incentivizing a hurt fighter to fall down through some other means so that they could call it a slip. So yeah, I've seen Vergil try to pull that with 3 knockdowns. He was credited getting knocked down in these 2, was not credited with the knockdown for Mean Machine when they fought. And again, that's not to say that Vergil Ortiz was like badly hurt or anything, but it was a knockdown. And I thought that it was pretty easy to call. So I had the final tally of Bohachuk versus Ortiz after the rewatch and the careful scoring. I had it 114 to 112, and still interim champion Sergey Bohachuk, 114-112. I wouldn't have been mad at a draw. I thought that Vergil Ortiz winning by a relatively wide scorecard was a little bit unfair. I think they gave was it 1 or 2 of the judges that gave Ortiz like 8 rounds? I think 2 of the judges might have given it. Yeah. What was it? One had it a draw, was it? And then the other 2, or was it that one of them had it a close win for Ortiz? Let me just check that really quickly. But the only reason I would say that it might not be a robbery is because, again, of the amount of swing rounds. And if you thought that Bohachuk was getting, knocked off balance and hurt a little bit more through Vergil's punches, and again, he won on the CompuBox. He did win on the CompuBox, which you're not watching the CompuBox as you're judging the fight. But for what it's worth, Vergil supposedly did land more punches by a pretty healthy margin too. So I wouldn't call it a full robbery, but I really question what they're looking at if you gave this fight to Vergil Ortiz Jr. I just didn't see it that way. But again, when I watched it the first time, I thought Vergil won. So in that regard, I can understand somebody giving Vergil Ortiz the fight. So yeah. Needless to say, I thought it was a sensational fight. I thought it was a great fight. I always feel like it's a little bit unfortunate when a great fight is kind of overshadowed with the controversy of the result. That's usually unfortunate. Let me get to some of what you're saying. Yeah, I agree. QT. Vergil did land some brutal body shots. And And yeah, DJ, Vergil does carry his power late. And, he did have to dig deep. He won this fight because he worked really hard to continue to let his hands go and to throw with mean intentions. That's what won him the fight. I thought that he lost the boxing match. I thought that he was, again, out jabbed and out, I don't know, because he might have won the precision battle too, the percentage of lands on CompuBox. I have to look at that again. But I thought that Bohachuk outlanded him, outworked him in points in parts of the fight, but I just don't think that Bohachuk was getting full credit for some of the stuff that he was landing because it didn't sound as loud. And sometimes Bohachuk throws punches where he's in close and he might throw a hook, a hook with his backhand, or throw this hook and throw this hook to the body, and it doesn't sound like it's got the same pop, the same sizzle as when Vergil comes in looking mad and throwing a shot to the body and then a shot up top, a hook up top, or throwing that haymaker. Well, not really a haymaker, but it's a laser of kind of an overhand right hand. And even if it, again, partially lands, it seems like it's effective because of how loud it is and how it's kind of knocking Bohachuk off balance. Bohachuk doesn't have the greatest balance in terms of looking like you're steady on your feet. So I'm not even sure that every time we were being told that Bohachuk was hurt, I'm not even sure he was hurt all those times. By the way, Charles Conwell looked pretty good on that undercard too. Maybe, if a fighter is on the outs with Turki Al-Sheikh, maybe they fight Charles Conwell, but he's well into that top 10, probably like the top 8 or 9 right now at 154. Let's see. So Ventru, you said that you scored it a draw, but felt that overall Vergil had a more dominant fight. You even considered giving the eighth round an 8-9. So to give that one an 8-9, it's like, I feel like the other fighter would have to like dominate or nearly stop the opponent for the rest of the round, really, to go from 10-8 to 9-8. I just don't see a lot of scenarios where it fits. Okay, so you said you need help here because you find it hard to give the 10-8 when it's a flash knockdown. But you didn't score. Okay, I see what you're saying. Well, to the degree that we stick to the script in calling knockdowns and not judging knockdowns based on how convincing of a knockdown it is, that would determine whether you want to give the 10-8 versus a 9-8. But I mean, a part of boxing is how you conduct, how you hold your feet, right? How you your footwork. So if you step in, but your fundamentals are off. So like say you throw a jab, but you don't know how to step in when you throw your jab with your lead foot. And so say you throw a jab, but you're kind of head over skis a little bit because you're leaning over with the jab. Say you get hit, but it's not like a meaningful shot that hurts you, but because you didn't step into your jab and you threw kind of like an arm jab, now you're sort of leaning forward. And then that shot that you got hit with, it could be a jab. It could be a jab that grazed you, knocks you off balance, so you kind of fall on your butt, right? If that, I feel like that is a legitimate knockdown because the guy who got dropped didn't, adhere to enough fundamental behavior or habits to where they went head over skis, got hit at that time, got dropped at that time, because a lot of boxing is also your timing. Sometimes, fighters will make it a point to try to hit the guy as they come in, or throw a punch, not to where the guy's head is, but to where his head is going. So punch placement and timing plays a part. So again, no, Vergil wasn't rocked to where, when he got up, he barely beat the 10 count and was still a little bit shaky. It wasn't any of that. But I still don't think that we should take that 10-8 away from Bohachuk. But I'll tell you what, your reason for giving the 9-8 is, I think, makes more sense than what I was hearing on the broadcast. Like if you're saying 9-8 because it was a kind of a happenstance, footwork, misplacement based knockdown rather than a, hey, I just blasted you out of the pocket. You ate my left hook, couldn't take it, you hit the canvas. It wasn't one of those knockdowns. I'll grant you that. Let's see. Yeah, QT, 11th round was the 11th round was great. Yeah, QT, you think the difference was Bohachuk kept coming forward no matter what, even when there was nothing on his punches. But see, even when there was nothing on his punches, I feel like it was seemingly nothing on his punches, because I thought that there might have been nothing on his punches even in those earlier rounds. But then I see Vergil Ortiz come to the corner with a cut on his nose, and then a couple rounds later a cut over his eye. It's like, and also you would see Vergil's body language change, and I don't think it was just because he was getting fatigued. I think he was getting backed up, and I think he was eating a lot of those right hands, and they were having an impact on him. I think that those were effective punches, even when Bohachuk looked like he was kind of casually throwing them without really like digging in and putting his weight, at least as far as we could see, putting his weight behind some of those punches. I thought that they were deceptively effective. Let's see. Nothing is original is in the house. Thank you for coming through. QT, you said the next fight for Vergil will be very telling of how Golden Boy really felt about Vergil's performance. Personally, I don't think he's ready just yet. Wouldn't even put him in with Tim yet. Yeah, I don't think he's, I don't know if he's ready for Tim Tszyu. Now, it sounded like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like Turki Al-Sheikh wanted to make a rematch, or is interested in a rematch between Vergil and Bohachuk. I don't know if the sanctioning body itself that has Bohachuk as the number one contender, I don't think that they mandated that rematch. But yeah, but if you're Vergil, do you take that rematch with Bohachuk? Or do you try to get something with a Tim Tszyu? Or, I mean, if you could get in with a Fundora, you know what I mean? Because now that he's beaten Bohachuk, who's got the WBC interim spot, well, now Vergil occupies that spot. So at least in theory, he is in line to fight Sebastian Fundora. I've been hearing about this Fundora versus Errol Spence fight for a while now. Nothing yet has materialized. At this point, I'm kind of hoping, and I think I said this on the last live chat or like a preview, but I'm hoping that they just run it back between Sebastian Fundora and Tim Tszyu because of the way that first fight went down. That's what I want to see. Fundora versus Tim Tszyu rematch. And then maybe we could get Vergil against either Bohachuk, or maybe even Vergil versus Terrence Crawford, even though I don't know if Crawford wants Vergil. Not to say that he can't beat Vergil, but he, you know, the clock's ticking with this almost 37-year-old Terrence Crawford. I think he wants to make every fight count. So if Terrence Crawford is going to fight somebody like a Vergil Ortiz, who's not like going to get you paid like Canelo, I feel like it's going to take Turki Al-Sheikh money to get Terrence Crawford to be down to fight a Vergil Ortiz. And then you've got, Jermell Charlo, who supposedly wants to come back at 154, which is interesting because he spent so much time out of the ring after that Canelo fight, and he bulked up to fight Canelo. I'd be surprised if he could get back to 154 without issue and be able to perform at his best, especially with this layoff. I would almost advise for Jermell Charlo to take a bit of a tune-up at 154 and then fight an opponent that matters. But I mean, he was a undisputed champion in the division, but the guys that he was beating to get the belt, Jason Rosario, Tony Harrison, Brian Castano, these guys aren't even in the top 12, 15 in the division anymore. Brian Castano hasn't fought since losing that rematch to Jermell Charlo. So it's like Jermell Charlo was beating the guys from yesteryear, from the last generation of 154. We haven't seen him in the mix with this crop of 154, Sebastian Fundora, Tim Tszyu, and so forth. Even Brian Mendoza, Jesus Ramos. We did see him knock Eric Salubin out back in 2017. Let's see. Boxing Fan is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Yeah, nothing is original. You said people are forgetting Xander Zayas, good fighter. I can't wait for his next step up. This is another case, though, when you're talking top rank, 154 division. Again, certain divisions, they thrive. 130, 126 kind of, 135, 140. Top rank's got it going on in some of those divisions. But top rank doesn't have a deep stable at 154. But they've got Xander Zayas. They're going to have to match him up with guys who don't have a promoter. Those kind of journeymen, win some, lose some types of guys who usually lose to the best fighters. Like a Patrick Teixeira, the last guy that they had him in there with. It's going to be slim pickings when it comes to top rank trying to matchmake for Xander Zayas. Again, without the help of Turki Al-Alshi. But yeah, Xander Zayas, Erickson Lubin, Jesus Ramos, who lost that close disputed decision to Erickson Lubin. Vito Melnicki. Yeah, they're all some good fighters at 154, as is, again, Charles Conwell. You said that second knockdown was a wake-up call. Pablo B said second knockdown was a wake-up call to Vergil. Either you KO the Ukrainian or you win clearly every single round from now. And you could hear Robert Garcia kind of stressing out in the corner saying, we need these next 3 rounds. We need these next 3 rounds. Or you need every round from here on out. Or don't load up on one shot. Stop looking for the home run, basically. Put your punches together. Throw combinations. Usually those are signs that the trainer isn't totally satisfied with what he's seeing in there. Joseph S. is in the house. Thank you for coming through. You said Duck Nello, a.k.a. Canelo, wasted 2024 cherry picking. Well, if you look at Canelo's fights ever since Dimitri Bivol, you had the trilogy fight with Golovkin. Okay, if they had to do it, okay. But then you had, the John Ryder fight, Jermell Charlo, the 154 coming up to 168, but you don't want to fight Terrence Crawford because you're not going to get credit fighting the smaller guy. Okay. But you also fought Amir Khan when Amir Khan basically went from 140, 147 up to, I believe, middleweight. I think it was middleweight. I don't think that was at 154. Middleweight, I think, to fight Canelo. But yeah, Triple G trilogy fight where you fought a 40-year-old, basically 40-year-old Triple G, John Ryder, Jermell Charlo, Jaime Munguia. Not that Munguia is a poor fighter, but okay, Jaime Munguia, B+, A-ish, tough guy, undefeated. And now Edgar Berlanga. This has been a very uninspiring stretch for Canelo. And the boxing community is getting louder and louder about our dissatisfaction with Canelo's matchmaking. Let's see. Joseph S. Yes, salute to the real boxing fans. Nothing is original said, after this weekend, what do I think about of the best fighter at featherweight, and how would I rank the top 3 in the division? So the featherweight division just featured a knockout and a changing of champion. I think it was the IBF champion. Luis Alberto Lopez was one of the funnest fighters to watch at featherweight, just like Emmanuel Navarrete was. Different styles, but equally bizarre, I would say. And this was Luis Alberto Venado Lopez's 4th title defense. Remember, he knocked out Michael Conlan. Who else did he beat? Abe in his last fight. Joet Gonzalez, who's always that journeyman, who's always 1 or 2 wins away from getting another shot, right? Because it's always kind of like an incestuous boxing stable when fighters under one banner just keep on fighting each other, right? So Top Rank already has Joet Gonzalez lined up in the queue. Like they used to have Isaac Dogbay too. So Luis Alberto Lopez is fighting Angelo Leo. It's a great fight for again, I said this at the top of the hour. I had it 4-4 going into the 9th round. And I think that I had it 5-4 for the challenger, Angelo Leo, who you might remember lost a close, tough decision against Stephen Fulton at 122. That's his only loss. Angelo Leo's only loss. He had a few fights since then. Good fights, good performances, then gets his title opportunity against Luis Alberto Lopez. And then in the 10th round of, again, a very, very good fight, where it looks like the champ might lose his belt because the things that are normally working for him, hey, it's not slowing Angelo Leo down. Yes, it looked like Leo was hurt a couple times, looked like he might be weakening and stuff, but then he would come right back, get behind that jab, double, triple jab, pop, 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 hitting Venado Lopez. Venado Lopez starts backing up. Venado Lopez likes to come in, throw those wide looping shots from weird angles. Venado Lopez looks like he looks like somebody who's wearing like a long sleeve sweater, and then you put your arms in the sweater, and then you start throwing the sleeves around with no arm in it. That's what Venado Lopez kind of punches like when he's lunging in. Well, he was landing some of those thumping shots, but I felt like he was getting outboxed for much of the fight against Angelo Leo. And then in another random exchange, Angelo Leo catches Venado Lopez with a hook, and Venado Lopez just falls back quickly, stiffens, falls all the way back. His head bounces against the canvas like one of those, like when you know that you hit the canvas hard when your head bounces twice. And then he was just looking up at the ceiling for like the next 6 seconds before he could even attempt to get up. He makes it back up to his feet barely, but no, he doesn't beat the 10 count. And he is so in bad shape that even as they bring the stool out, Venado Lopez tries to steady himself. He's on his knees at this point, tries to steady himself on the stool, and he still looks shaky. Dramatic knockout. Certainly one of the knockouts of the year. It's up there with, what else is a candidate? I mean, AJ versus Ngannou, obviously, but there are a couple other great knockouts, but this is in the discussion. And this, I thought, was a fight of the year contender. Now, Vergil versus Bohachuk, also fight of the year contender, but tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk 1 kind of has that fight of the year in the bag. Even though Vergil versus Bohachuk was a great fight, I feel like because of a combination of the stakes, the magnitude, the importance, battle for undisputed at heavyweight, and then the fight plays out like that, I feel like Fury versus Usyk kind of has to be fight of the year. Unless we get something just mind-boggling sometime, throughout the rest of 2024. But yeah. So to answer your question about my top 3 in the division, first of all, props to Angelo Leo. Sometimes when you see a guy make it to a big fight like he did against Stephen Fulton and then lose, it's tough to get back into the picture. And here he is, one division up, fighting for the title, and then he delivers in his hometown, Albuquerque, New Mexico, becomes the IBF featherweight champion. Hats off to Angelo Leo. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Luis Alberto Lopez, because he's only about like 5'4". He's a really short fighter. So I don't see him going up to 130 and being a real factor there. So we'll see how quickly he could get back on the horse and win another couple of fights, maybe against Joey Gonzalez. I don't know. And then get back into title contention. So right now, my top 3 in the division, well, if Lee Wood is in the mix, Lee Wood would probably be number 3. I would say maybe okay, this is tough. I'll tell you why. Because there's Brandon Figueroa, who fights pretty infrequently. He fights infrequently. So I would say Brandon Figueroa 2, Lee Wood 3. It's hard. Actually, I might go Brandon Figueroa 1. Brandon Figueroa 1. I would say Nick Ball 2, but every time I envision a Nick Ball fight with Lee Wood, Nick Ball has Lee Wood in all types of trouble and then gets dramatically knocked out like Lee Wood does a lot of his opponents. You know what I mean? So Nick Ball just had that good win against Raymond Ford, who I looked at the time as being a top 3, top 4 guy in the division. And then there's Rafael Espinoza, who beat Robesi Ramirez and looked good in his one title defense. So, and then there's Ray Vargas, you know what I mean? So, and then Angelo Leo. So I'll say Brandon Figueroa 1. I'll say Lee Wood 2, and I can't put Ray Vargas at 3 because I thought Nick Ball kind of had his way with Ray Vargas. And, you know, you could say Robeisy Ramirez skill and talent wise might be top 3. I'll just put him at 4 right now. But I'll put Nick Ball at number 3. And then Rafael Espinoza at 4, Robeisy Ramirez at 5, Ray Vargas at 6, Angelo Leo or Raymond Ford at 6, and the other at 7. But right now, I would have to say Brandon Figueroa at 1. I would. The infrequency of his fights, Ray Vargas's fights, Lee Wood's fights as of late makes it harder to rank these guys, but Brandon Figueroa's style of pressure, there are a few fighters that put you on what I like to call the treadmill from hell. Navarrete is one of those guys. Who else just throws endless punches where it's just a total downpour and it's like, oh man, get me out of here. William Zepeda is another one. Brandon Figueroa puts a similar type of pressure on his opponents. And yes, I could see Robeisy Ramirez out sharpshooting Figueroa, but I feel like Figueroa, because of his volume, because of the way that he fights, would just get to him. I feel like he would get to Robeisy Ramirez. Let's see. Jay Foreman is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Yeah, Ventura, I agree. How can we talk? Interms are not champions. I don't know why they keep calling interim champions. Interms are like, you're next in line if you're lucky. Because sometimes interms never get their shot at the title. But yeah, interim, no, you're not a champion. You know, even when somebody wins a belt, a major belt, if it's vacant, well, first of all, I don't acknowledge like the regular belts, right? You got like super champion, the regular champion. I don't really acknowledge the regular champion. The WBC did it kind of differently because they would give somebody like a super status, but not make them defend their titles. And so you had another guy who was underneath that, who's actually doing the title defenses. It's kind of weird, but I like to have one champion per sanctioning body. So no, interim belt, none of that. To me, you're either the champion in that division or you're not. Jay Foreman said, I don't know how Bohachuk managed to stay upright during those shots from Ortiz. His offense was quite sneaky. Yeah, I don't think he was getting full credit for some of what he was landing. It looked like it was a lot more, visibly, it might not have looked impactful, but when you look at Vergil Ortiz's like body language and stuff like that, I feel like Bohachuk was throwing a little bit harder than it appeared. Whereas Vergil looked like he was throwing every punch like a home run shot. But he got outboxed. And again, I think that he got outboxed because when it came to the jab battle, Vergil had his hands down here and Bohachuk had his hands up here. So when Vergil was hitting Bohachuk, it would be partial sometimes, splitting the guard, maybe throw some punches around the guard when you're talking about the hooks. Right hands over the top, partially, sometimes landing, uppercuts landing as well. But with Bohachuk, he was able to make Vergil eat those jabs because Vergil's hands were down here and he wasn't as elusive with the slipping as he was in those first 3 rounds. Yeah, Pablo B. Venado underestimated Angelo Leo. You could see it in his facial expressions. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you might have said that in one of the comments recently. Venado would kind of like look away, or even when he would get hit, he would roll with it, but it was almost like he was rolling with it in a disrespectful way. Like he would just like totally look away, like he's looking out to the ref or to the audience. Whereas Angelo Leo just continued to work, continued to box. Then Venado would come back in with those looping home run shots that again have a lot of thump to them, but I just thought that Angelo Leo was doing more work. Stan Tucker is in the house. What's up, Dad? Great fight. Yeah, you thought Bohachuk won. Oh, we haven't even talked about the fight, really. I haven't gotten on the phone with you and talked about it. I'm probably going to see you tomorrow or Thursday. But you thought Bohachuk won, but can understand someone seeing it the other way. Yeah, it was a tough fight to score. I don't think you could really call it a robbery. Now, if you had it Vergil by a wide margin, that would be a robbery. But Vergil simply winning, edging it, I don't think that that's a robbery. It depends on how you scored those swing rounds and how you interpreted the work that each guy was doing. Let's see. Yeah, Jay Foreman, that Lopez KO was kind of scary. Maybe you're hard-headed, but you think Lopez severely underestimated. Okay, so you think he underestimated Angelo Leo as well. I could see that. You think that if Lopez recovers and he's not like a shot fighter or a diminished version of himself, that he beats Leo in the rematch? I mean, maybe, but here's the thing. Like, fighters who are defending their titles, they have to know that each guy who's coming up and is your next mandatory is coming to take everything that you've got. You know what I mean? They're coming to take that title. I don't know. I mean, I've never been a world champion, but you would have to know that these title reigns can't be taken for granted. We see guys lose the belt all the time. Sometimes it's a guy who we thought would be champion for a while. Robeisy Ramirez just lost it to Rafael Espinoza. That fight ended up, I'm sure, way tougher than Robeisy Ramirez expected it. We saw Joe Cordina lose his title to Anthony Cacace. You know, like, after fighting a tough fight with Eduardo Nunez, you know, Cordina barely slid past that one, then lost his title to Cacace. You can't take any of these title defenses for granted. By the way, Cacace is going to have to defend his 130-pound title against Josh Warrington. You want to talk about somebody who just keeps on getting one opportunity after the next. Like, Josh Warrington might be the guy who gets the most opportunities next to Joet Gonzalez, maybe, or I don't know, Adrian Broner, right? But Josh Warrington, I think, is still coming off that loss, that knockout loss to Lee Wood, and is getting a title shot against Cacace, a division up. Eddie Hearn, man, like, I think it's Eddie Hearn, right? Who's got Josh Warrington. This guy just, some people can't catch a break. Josh Warrington can't stop catching breaks. Sometimes he can't catch a break in the actual fight, but in terms of getting the next opportunity, then the next, I just don't think that he should be the guy competing for Anthony Cacace's title up at 130. And by the way, what's up with Mauricio Lara? I saw him in his comeback fight look less than spectacular, and now he's taken a lot more time off after losing to Lee Wood in that rematch, looking unspectacular, and against, who was it, Daniel Lugo? In a fight that really could have gone either way, where Lara was getting hurt in that fight, and then we haven't seen him for several months. What's up with Mauricio Lara? For a while, he was looking like real good. Let's see. Boxing fan, you said that QT saw the fight the same way that you saw it. Nothing is original says Luis Alberto Lopez versus Raymond Ford. I would like it, but because it's cross promotional, maybe it doesn't get done without the help of Turki Al-Sheikh. Yeah, because Robson Conceição gets opportunities too. Yeah, it's the same thing. If you're, it's top rank, in their stable, they'll have like their, the guy who just got a title opportunity get another title opportunity. Oscar Valdez is about to fight for Navarrete's belt. They just fought a couple fights ago, and they're about to lock horns again. Let's see. Nothing is original. Name 3 fighters you think could be crossover superstars of the next generation. Abdullah Mason, who again is going to be fighting on this Christian Mbili versus Derevianchenko undercard, which I'm going to be issuing the preview either tomorrow, most likely Thursday. My preview prediction video is going to come out, but I would say Abdullah Mason, Diego Pacheco, and David Morrell. Yes, I know he didn't look great in his last fight, but David Morrell is one of them. But let me just try to think of somebody else. Shoot, Bacoli, if he looks as nasty in his next fight as he did in his last fight, Martin Bacoli. But let me think. Let's pick a division. Oh, William Zepeda, 135, because of his fight style too. William Zepeda could be a big deal, I think, if he keeps on winning. But yeah, we're about to wrap this one up in a second. But before I do, I just want to kind of give some quick thoughts on Christian Mbili versus Derevianchenko. I was mentioning that Mbili, like Janibek, it's kind of sitting on an island, right? So it's like, how do you matchmake for Mbili if he gets past Derevianchenko, who is just the king of fighting like the razor close decision losses against some of the best fighters of the sport? Started with Daniel Jacobs, then with Triple G. Then he fought Jermall Charlo. And I still think Jermall Charlo is probably the only guy who clearly beat Derevianchenko, because the next loss was against Carlos Adames, and that fight kind of could have gone either way. Very close fight. And then Jaime Munguia could have gone either way. Maybe that knockdown in the last round kind of separated it. So maybe Jaime Munguia clearly won that close fight with Derevianchenko. But again, Daniel Jacobs, Triple G, Jermall Charlo, Carlos Adames, and Jaime Munguia. Now he's going to be fighting Christian Mbili. Is this going to be a case where the guy who's fighting all these close fights finally gets stopped because maybe that Jaime Munguia fight was his last stand? Or is he finally going to catch a break and win? Or is it going to be another super close decision loss against Christian Mbili? And if Mbili wins, how do you matchmake with him? Because again, Top Rank doesn't have a deep stable at 168. What do? Janibek, was sent to the hospital because he fainted and got sick after that weigh-in, right before his last title defense. So does Janibek go up to 168? Maybe you could get Janibek versus Mbili, because I want to see Mbili fight a lot of the best fighters at 168. Without the help of Turki Al-Sheikh, I just don't know how that cross-promotional matchmaking could get done. But yeah, Nothing is Original said, thoughts on Jaime Munguia leaving Golden Boy for Top Rank. Interesting. Yeah, okay. Well, there's your next match. Maybe Christian Mbili versus Jaime Munguia. There you go. Problem solved. I think maybe that's where you go if you're Top Rank. So it works out in that case. You've got that one guy now, Jaime Munguia, that you could put your other really good fighter, Christian Mbili, against. But yeah, so those are my initial thoughts. Now you've got Mbili versus Munguia, but it makes me wonder because it looked like Oscar De La Hoya had been really advocating for Jaime Munguia, and then Munguia gets his title shot against Canelo. I wonder if there was something throughout the process about the, Golden Boy versus Canelo beef that turned Munguia off. I don't know if it was personal or if it was business. I'm thinking it was business. Most business decisions are business, but I don't know that. Yeah, Jay Foreman, Venado Lopez was frustrated. He was getting outboxed. Credit to Leo for making it that way. He seemed uninterested. He seemed like, okay, if we got to do this, okay, pop. Maybe I take you out with these, power shots. He wasn't frame by frame, moment by moment, outboxing Angelo Leo. He was out boxing and out fighting Abe in his last fight, not against Leo though. But yeah, why in the world would Bacoli call out Michael Hunter? Yeah, why would Martin Bacoli, after beating Big Baby Anderson, call out Michael Hunter? Well, the short answer is obviously because Michael Hunter's the guy who stopped him in the 10th. So he wants to clean up that unfinished business, but it's like, damn, have some, see the bigger picture here. You know what I mean? Like, dude, like the world is your oyster now. And you've got Turki Al-Sheikh's interest. How about fighting one of these top 5 guys? But yeah, I want to thank you guys for coming into the live chat. Again, I'm going to be doing the Christian Mbili versus Sergey Derevianchenko preview prediction, probably Thursday morning. That should be out. Abdullah Mason is on that undercard. Arslanbek Makhmudov is going to return to the ring. His second fight since the Ajit Kabayel fight. He's going to be fighting Guido Vianello, who fought that close fight just recently against F.A. Ajagba and who lost a few fights ago against Johnny Rice. So, Guido Vianello, at first I didn't think much of him, but when I saw him fight F.A. Ajagba, he might be better than I thought. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that Makhmudov versus Vianello fight takes place. But yeah, thank you. Nothing is Original, QT, Jay Foreman, Boxing Fan. Let's see. Pablo B, Ventru, Jay Foreman. I know my dad was in the house, Stan Tucker. I think Benji Tucker, my cousin, is watching as well. What up, Benji? What up, Brexley? Joseph S, thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. Claymore Rain, Marco Cardona. Yeah, I want to thank you guys. Until next time, I'm going to try to pick this up weekly. I do have one on the way. I do have our first baby on the way. So that's one of the reasons I haven't been been able to get to these as much, but there's, a lot going on between house shopping, starting a family. But I am going to keep on bringing these previews, live chats, and so forth. So yeah, rock with me, and I'll definitely rock with y'all. Yeah, Benji, I see you. Heck yeah. We were just chopping it up on FaceTime with him, myself, and my brother just before this. And and if my brother Billy's watching, hi Celine, hi Billy, hi Gia, love you guys. Yeah, but thank you guys for coming in. I'm gonna do again, it's kind of a slow boxing weekend with Mbili versus Derev being the main fight, and the next weekend isn't that great either. I mean, we do next week get like a Jarrett Hurd versus Jason Rosario comeback fight for them both. And then we get like Floyd Mayweather versus John Gotti 3 on the weekend, but not a ton going on. I have to look again at that schedule, but it wasn't looking great next weekend, like the weekend after this coming weekend. Yeah. A new prospect for the boxing world incoming. Yeah. Thank you, boxing fan Pablo B. Thank you guys. Yeah. But yeah, until next time, talk with you guys soon. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.